I think any television performance of that period, I was out of my gourd.
Everybody knows one. Every garden knows one. It's the loneliest song that you ever do.
And then she was this tall, long, tall bird with black hair. And she's overpowering. She's got very piercing eyes and a rather doleful expression. But I remember that she warmed up when we sang together. She seemed kind of a bit remote, and I'm not surprised that she was remote. I was probably like this crazed, like, anorexic figure walking in. I'm sure she didn't know what to make of me.
Baby, if I pray every night, you come back to me.
And at the end of the medley thing, I remember she sort of hugged me, and I thought, oh, she's quite human after all. Hopefully she was thinking the same about me.
You want to be understood, you know what I mean? Ziggy Stardust was
nothing to understand. I mean,
was concerned with famine in the world and so on, and prophecies of the world running out of food and stuff like that.
I'm a storyteller and a story writer, and nothing that I do is on any kind of intellectual slant.
You got no mission.
No, it's just...
yeah.
Oh. It was Carlos's riff, the Fame riff. We've been using that riff for months on stage in a reworking of the Flair's Foot Stomping, and which indeed was with Loder.
Everybody young and old learns how to rock and roll. Listen to something new. Everybody sure can do. Foot stomping, 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 foot stomping.
And Ava Cherry did a funny dance on the piano. I remember. A shimmy. She did a shimmy. Oh, that's right, because it started off as foot stomping and ended up as I wish I could shimmy like my sister Kate. That's right. And it was all that dang, 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 foot stomping.
Wish I could shimmy like my sister Kate. She can shimmy like a jelly on the plate. All the girls are, I can do it, I can do it, yeah. Ooh. Everybody in the neighborhood.
Didn't that foot stomping riff turn into the basis for Fame, a duet with John Lennon?
Well, we were in the studio, you know, when John came in and said, right, you know, what are we going to do? And I said, oh, God, what should we do? I said, Carls, quit that riff that you become this. We've got him there, let's do something with it, you know. So we got him there and we did the riff, and he started joining in, and it became Fame.
What you need is in the river. What you get is no tomorrow. What you need, you have to borrow.
The single Fame really exploded, and that was my least favourite track on the album, even though John had contributed to it and everything. And I had no idea, as with Let's Dance, that was what a commercial single is. And I haven't got a clue when it comes to singles. I just don't know. I don't know about them. I don't get it. And Fame was really out of left field for me. And I had no idea that combination of being completely satisfied with anything I've written. I see great vast holes in it.
I'm an alligator.
And then I started reading people like William Burroughs, and I started learning about the cut-up techniques that they employed to create new ways of thinking. And I thought I'd try and apply that to writing. So that's kind of how it evolved.
It was like doing a painting, a non-objective painting. It was rather like sort of playing with the colours and the paint itself, and looking at it for a bit and then seeing what figurative image comes off it, and then trying to either hide that or amplify it or whatever. It was a nice way of life.
Brian Eno, he's very helpful in terms of opening me up as a writer and changing my ideas about how I can write songs.
There was absolutely no format. It wasn't at all formal. We came in often with virtually nothing at all. And we would just take 5 or 6 notes or 2 or 3 chords and just repeat them in various sequences.
With Brian particularly, the whole idea of using a recording studio as an instrument, of not necessarily thinking you have to be prepared totally before you go in, that accidents will happen, and sometimes planned accidents work out really well. There's a bad note. You can layer that note several times with other instruments, and suddenly that bad note sounds like an extraordinary piece of arrangement.
And so with the ongoing kind of music that I was doing at the time, Low, Heroes and Loder, finally Scary Monsters, which by the time of Scary Monsters, the kind of music that I was doing was becoming very acceptable. And I was not the only artist. Well, there was just a small group of us in '76 doing that kind of music. By the early 80s, it was definitely the sound of the early 80s. I think, having had a gigantic success of Let's Dance, I suddenly, for the first time in a long, long time, felt trapped. But also, I think I was fairly lured by the idea of that kind of international fame. And it seemed like, I wasn't quite willing to break out of that trap myself quite so easily. I thought, well, I'll have another stab at this kind of thing because this is exhilarating. Looking back on it all, Tonight Will Never Let Me Down, what I think I unfortunately did is pulverize some perfectly good songs. I think I should have sabotaged those songs. I dealt with them far too quickly and thinking in a far too linear fashion of making them work within radio format. And whenever I've done that, it's always been an utter catastrophe. And I probably should never have done that. Because some of the songs themselves I really like. But I always say, God, I wish I'd done that again. It's not quite... Oh well.
The show that I'm doing this year will be very, very theatrical compared to that last show. Much more like the shows that I used to do in the early 70s.
When your faith is failing, call my name. When you've got nothing coming, call my name.
Despite the set being so big and the impressiveness, I thought, of the clatter of activity that was going on throughout, it should have worked in stadiums, but worked in arenas. I think anybody who saw it indoors will testify to the fact that it was probably a really exciting show. But the pure size of it, I had thought, well, somehow you've got to be big in stadiums. But what I didn't take into account is because of the finite smallness of everything that was happening on stage, didn't go across in a stadium situation. That was a big mistake. I inherently liked what we were doing. I just don't think it came off quite the way it should have done. On the guitar side of things, having now worked with Tin Machine for the last year and a half, I'm really quite like working with a small band again.
I can read, I can count down.
Let's Dance was impressive, but it doesn't give me the same kind of satisfaction as, say, I Can't Read from the Tin Machine album, which for me is great. It's a great piece of work.
I can't read anymore.
There's already a second Tin Machine album done, right?
Yes.
In Australia?
Yeah.
That was quick.
Yeah, well, we had the urge to go do, and also I wanted to take them to a land they'd never been to before, to see what it did to them. And,
What did it do to them?
Not very much.
Is this the last time you'll be doing this material? I mean, you'll never do this again, or you generally just don't want to do great?
Absolutely and unequivocally the last time.
Really?
Without doubt.
Oh.
No, I won't ever touch them.
Really? What are you going to do with them?
Well, I'll probably get clones in and they'll do them all over the world, like Andrew Lloyd Webber does. I've noted that there's been a great emphasis on the older bands and older artists to go out with very large contingents. And so I thought, okay, just do the opposite. I want to keep the stage as minimalist as possible. I really wanted to have the feel of an opera or ballet stage, where it was just one large, dark space that could be lit in a theatrical fashion.
I just wanted to be a better man. Time may change me. I can't change time.
Have the arrangements changed? I mean, so the song's going to sound...
Stripped down, I think, is the real word. Stripped down so that it does become a keyboard, space, drums, lead guitar interpretation of the songs that I've done over the years.
All the lane on my man, can't afford to take it. I'm back in trouble to take it. She's alright. She's alright.
It's a combination of film and video, so there's live events against footage, and they're completely spinning off each other. It's good. It's wonderful. It really is. I'm delighted with it. I've never been so thrilled.
But I've lost audiences many times over the years, and they've come back again for another reason or another thing. And I sort of have got that mutual agreement with them. If it's not going very well, then they stay away. And then if they like what I'm doing, they come back again. Which is fair enough, you know.
I think you've got to be pretty emphatic and upfront and forward about what you're trying to do and what you're trying to say in rock and roll. It's a people's culture, so I don't think it's too wise to be too clever.
But I'm very instinctive as an entertainer and a writer, and I never quite know what I'm doing till I've done it.
I want to impress myself. I think that is the bottom line. When I can stand back from a piece of work and say, that's really good, that's when I'm at my happiest.
God's love be with you.